What are the benefits of doing target marketing?
The number one benefit is efficiency.
Good morning. I'm Victor Arocho, producing live out of Miami, Fort Lauderdale. And welcome to the Sport of Sales podcast. And today, I'm co-hosting with my great friend, mentor, fellow entrepreneur, Steve Running on the line. Steve, he's got a tremendous background and he's been an entrepreneur since, 30, 40 years, Steve?
Since the beginning of the 80s, 1982.
Awesome. In this episode, we're going to talk about target marketing, or your ideal target client or profile.
Target marketing can mean a lot of different things to different people selling different kinds of products, depending on how narrowly focused the products are versus how broadly focused, like a mass market product. I don't know, if you're selling shuttlecraft insulators, it's probably a pretty tight and narrow market. If you're selling toothpaste, it's a damn broad market. So I think I'll start off telling a story about my sister Sandra. I would say she was about 11 or 12. And we had a chestnut tree in our yard. And in the spring, the chestnuts would sprout. This chestnut tree would spread chestnuts out all over in the fall. Hundreds, if not thousands of chestnuts would be all over the place. And they worked their way into the dirt. And in the spring, chestnut trees would start to sprout. And she would collect them. She would dig up dirt, fill up Dixie cups, and put the seedlings in. And she'd put them in a red wagon, and she'd walk up and down the street, and she would knock on doors, and she would sell them. And she'd sell them for $1 a piece. And darn it, if like 6 hours later, she wouldn't come back with a pocket full of money from selling those chestnut seedlings. Now, I don't know if people actually planted them or not. Now, of course, this is back in the late 60s, okay, when you could let your 12-year-old walk around the neighborhood and go door to door selling seedlings. I don't think that I'd probably go to jail for letting your kid do that today. I don't know. But it lays out my point, okay? And my point is that you could just go from door to door selling any product. And sooner or later, if you do knock on enough doors, you will find somebody to buy the product, whether you're selling toothpaste or chestnut seedlings or corporate jets. Now, you probably have to knock on a heck of a lot of doors until you finally find a person ready to buy a corporate jet. But if you knock down enough of them for long enough, sooner or later you'd find the prospect and you'd be able to sell them a corporate jet. But that's not the most efficient way to do things. Yet, I meet salespeople all the time that do things that way. I'll talk about copier salesmen because they're constantly walking into my office. And they're usually young guys. Very seldom have I met an experienced copier salesman. I don't know if there's such a thing as an experienced copier salesman. They're usually young people, and there's their first selling job, and they're going from door to door. And I'll ask them, I'll say, well, why don't you, rather than go from door to door, think about which businesses own the most copiers, or for what reason somebody would have a lot of copiers, and go to those businesses first. And they all look at me like I'm a genius. They almost look at me like I'm some kind of phenomenal guru. To me, this makes perfect sense. Think about how to target rather than just go door to door to door to door to door. And so sometimes I sit down with these people if they seem like they're really willing to learn, and I explain the process. And that is to figure out who needs your product, why they would need it, how much they'd be willing to pay for it, what they're using to solve the problem now, what they like about it, what they don't like about it, what they'd alter, change, or improve, what's most ideal, and figure out where your product fits into that, and then see if you can narrow down out of the largest sample or largest amount of potential prospects the first and easiest 10%, the low-hanging fruit. If there's 1,000 people in my state that could buy a product, or 1,000 companies that could buy my product, I'm going to try to think about, well, where's those 1,000? And then which 10 of those 1,000 are going to be the easiest to sell? And I'd start there. And then I'd say, okay, who are the next 20 or the next 30 easiest sell, etc. And that's what I mean by target marketing. Now, the decision of out of those 1,000 potential buyers, or coming up with the total universe of potential buyers, requires you to think about a lot of things based on the kind of product you're selling. And consequently, okay, let's take a mass market product like toothpaste. Well, pretty much everybody uses toothpaste. So how do I pick a prospect? Well, to do something to your toothpaste to make it less generic and more specific. And we see that's what happens. That's what Procter & Gamble and the other big toothpaste makers make. They have 16 or 20 or 30 or 40 different types of toothpaste. They got one for the chemist that's got fluoride in it because chemists like the right chemicals in their toothpaste. They got one that makes your mouth sexy and bright and white for those people who want to have sexy, bright and white teeth. They make one that fights cavities for people who may go into the dentist and have a problem with their teeth constantly having holes in them. And we can go on and go on and on. But each time they come out with a new toothpaste that's got some special slogan on it. When you look at the toothpaste tube box and you see that it makes a claim would be fresher breath or brighter teeth or whatever. Whenever it makes that claim, you know that they've targeted that specific mixture to the group, the demographic of people that see that as the biggest problem they want their toothpaste to solve. So there's two ways to look at this. We can look at it from a product and say, select and develop a product towards a market that you know of, or look at your product and say, what is so special and different about my product? And then what demographic, what group of people have the problem that this product addresses most specifically? Once you've done that, then you have your universe. You say, those are my potential customers. Every one of them is closable. Doesn't mean that I'm going to close them on my product because I have competition out there. And there's other environmental issues. Do they have the authority to buy? Are they the shopper? Do they have, can they afford to buy, and so on? Those kinds of things that are standard things that you consider when you're assessing prospects. But once I've got my demographic, now I want to take a look at it and say, how big is it? What's the best way to message that demographic? How many times does it have to be messaged before I'll have enough rapport with the market segment or that target market that it will start to listen to me and speak with me honestly and not generalize, delete, and distort my messages, and then allow me to present and ultimately close.
I have a question on that one before. What did you
Sure.
say? There's certain touch points or measurements?
Yeah.
To figure out what was the amount of, I don't know. I know what was an action, a number, or for your target market, and then you continued.
Yeah, it's going to vary depending on your product and the price of the product and how many you need to sell and how many actual buyers there are in your universe. I mean, if I'm selling corporate jets, it's a much smaller universe of potential buyers than if I'm selling toothpaste, which is a gigantic universe. It's essentially 7 billion people. All right. Now, the market segment, I suspect that corporate jet markets don't segment into as many targets or groups as toothpaste does. I don't know if that's true because I've never talked to somebody who sells corporate jets, but I can hypothesize. Right? I would say that if I was going to target market corporate jets, I would say I could target market governments, extremely wealthy people, corporations, political parties, maybe NGOs and nonprofits. And I suspect that those would be 5 different segments that have fairly different reasons for buying a corporate jet and fairly different needs within the corporate jet, or are solving different problems with the corporate jet. Now, why is that important to put them into those kinds of groups? Well, the kind of presentation that I make has to be based on, it should be prospect centric. And that's based on what the problems are and the interpretation of the problem and what the hypothetical solution is as determined by the belief system of the prospects. Well, corporate prospects think different than government prospects, which think different than the guy who's got some money that buying a corporate jet comes out of his pocket change. The reason and the way that they're buying is going to be different. And boy, it must be really expensive to sell a corporate jet, and it must take a lot of prep and a lot of very sophisticated collateral and selling material. And so you can't, the philosophy of target marketing says if you try, and studies show that if you try to sell everybody at the same time, the same way with the same brochure, you end up muddled and you don't sell anyone. You need to take the time, the investment. And what is that an investment? An investment of your time, an investment of advertising dollars, an investment of collateral, and an investment into the creative resources to create that collateral, a investment into the obtaining of the names and contact information for the people that lie within the sales channel or the supply chain. All that stuff is an investment. You're doing all that before you actually start talking to someone. And in the case of corporate jets, you might be spending millions of dollars before you actually get on the phone and talk to somebody or go out and have a meeting. And also it may involve a lot of meetings that require you to fly over to Dubai 3 times this year, which is expensive. I can sell toothpaste on the corner. I don't know if I'd sell a lot of it. That'd be a strange place to sell toothpaste, but it's a different kind of sale. In any case, though, the fundamentals apply. I have to figure out what segment I'm going to sell to, i.e. what segment all are interested in hearing the same message about my product. Find those people. All right. It doesn't mean physically find them. Find them in some kind of information format, some virtual database. Find them. Start to make contact. Doesn't mean I have to make personal contact. Sometimes it does mean I have to make personal contact. Sometimes it means I have to advertise in the magazines they read, advertise on the television stations that they watch. It means I may have to send them advertisements via mail. Maybe I got to put gift certificates in those mailer packs. It varies depending on the product. But I still, for everything I'm selling, I have to look at the channel that I'm going to use to make my initial contact and do my initial education. It could be cold calls. It varies on the product, but I have to plan that, and it takes resources and planning and good strategic analysis to do that. And then it takes testing. If I've got very expensive stuff that I'm using to make contact, I may not want to print up 1 million copies of it. I might want to print up a couple hundred and test it on a small group of prospects and see if it works, see if I get positive response. If I don't, I may want to say, let's go back to the drawing board and try again. That's all part of the process of target marketing and target market research and target market strategy. Does that answer your question?
Yes. and I'm sure there's even more, but I want to get to the next phase. So that was excellent, right? So it goes back to every time someone, or when I speak with people that want to grow their businesses, it's kind of funny how they don't have the answer what the market share is, and then from the market share to surgically target your ideal client, right? Because we teach it in like a dartboard, right? Your ideal client should be that red dot, and then sometimes there's others that fill outside the dartboard, but if anything that you don't hit the dartboard, that's not your client. But the one you're definitely focused and targeted at is that bullseye. What are the benefits of doing target marketing?
The number one benefit is efficiency. Theoretically, you develop the best ratio, so you get the most return for the least amount of effort. Sometimes, the effort is strategic, is planning, as opposed to tactical, which means going out and executing. Sometimes spending a little more time on the thought process and the data collection process and the messaging is better off than just going out and executing. I may have told you this story before. I'll give you an example of a consultation I did with somebody. I met somebody who had a fairly decent sized business where he replaced pumps and compressors in buildings in New York City. And I didn't realize how gigantic of this is tens of millions of dollars, this business. And his business had slowly come apart as he had salesmen, his salesman had aged out because he had been in the business for a while. And his son had come in and they both were working on it. And they were trying these web strategies. And as I listened to him, I said, let me ask you this. When does a customer ultimately need your product? And he said, when the pump breaks. And I said, well, how do they know when the pump breaks? He says, well, they hear it making a noise. And I say, what's the first thing they do? Well, they go to the telephone and look up pump repair places, or they go to their directory, or they go to a file cabinet. I said, why can't they just look at the pump and say, oh, dial this number? And they're like, well, I guess that would be a good idea. And I said, so why don't you just get stick-on things and go put them on everybody's pumps? They said, well, I can't do that. And I said, why? And they said, because you'd need permission. And I said, well, you need permission. I tell you what, I've solved your problem. What I'd like you to do is go get 500 of these cards with these oak tags, the old-fashioned oak tags, about 2.5 inches by 5 inches, with the little copper twisty wire. And what I want you to do is, when your mechanic goes out and repairs one pump, to have the mechanic have an assistant, or the ability to call an assistant, and he comes in with these tags and he says, you know what, you're our 10th customer today. We're going to give you a free inspection. We'll inspect every pump you have. You're giving them something free. And then have somebody walk around, inspect the pumps, and put your tag on every pump before he leaves. Then the next time the pump breaks, they'll say, oh, there's a tag here, and they'll call you. And that was the end of the marketing plan. Business went through the roof. He sold it finally. Okay? How simple was that? What happened is, looked at the problem, looked at the demographic, looked at the fastest way to the prospect, looked at when they had the problem, and then came up with a solution. That's target marketing. Now, they're looking at it and saying, oh, we have to sell on the internet because that's the most modern way. Well, I guess that's a way to sell. By the time somebody gets to the internet looking up a solution, he's going to be going to Google, and he's going to be seeing 3, 4, 5, 6 different solutions. With my methodology, when the pump is broke, they look at it, they say, oh, here's the tag. Oh, it says call Joe. All right, here's his number. Boy, that's easy. Now I don't have to get on the fucking internet for 3 hours trying to figure out how to fix this pump. I'll have it fixed in 10 minutes. As a matter of fact, I got my cell phone with me. I don't even have to go downstairs to the basement to the office to call this guy. I'll call him from my cell phone. Hey, Joe, you got somebody to fix the pump? Yeah? Oh, they'll be down in an hour? Great. Boom. New pump sold. Instant. That's the idea of target marketing. The idea of to think about who you sell to, why you sell to, when do they have the problem, when do you want to buy, and then having the best sales channel to them, rather than thinking that there's just one generic method for selling.
I thought that was excellent, and it gave us definitely the benefits and the need for target. And man, I know that can go on forever, but it can go to the point where you could really, really drill down. Before you said that, you said it was why the benefits, and you started off because it's a great leverage of your time. But the one thing that I want, owners, sales professionals, entrepreneurs, it will take you time up front. So you would have to agree that they need to understand that the time that they put up front and the better they do at their target market, understanding their benefits, and obviously the next one, they need to realize it's the best leveraging of your time, because once you have it complete, you're going to want to revisit it based on different markets and so forth, but you need to do that work up front. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
And wrapping this up, just like professional sports teams, they put a lot of effort into target marketing their fans, whether they want to build a new stadium, they target market where to scout. And as Steve said earlier, they narrowed down out of a large pool where the best potential prospects are. So spend your time figuring out where you could be the most efficient in going after your target client, your target company, your target customer. Fish where the fish are. A bit about Steven Running. He is the owner of several companies. His main company is Deidre Moret. He has spent over 30 years helping entrepreneurs and CEOs for hyper-growth companies to hire superior workforces. He's an expert in systematizing the recruiting process for companies that want to hire the best talent in the industry. Now, if you're struggling to locate and secure top talent and rare specialized professionals, Steven Running and his team at Deidre Moret can help you design and build a system that will identify and secure the right people for your organization for the extended future. This is Victor Rocho signing out. The sport of sales. Break the record books. Let yourself be great. Go for the trophy every year.